morning, everyone. Welcome to oral communication in context. So we are now at our fifth week, and our topic for this week is functions of communications. For this week, we will be discussing the difference between verbal and nonverbal cues. We will also try to comprehend an oral text and identify strategies used by the speaker to convey ideas. And we will also evaluate the effectiveness of an oral communication activity. So let's start with our first slide. So verbal cues. So we will now differentiate verbal and nonverbal cues. So verbal cue is a prompt that is conveyed in spoken language from one person to one another or a group of people. So through this, basically, according to David White, people tend to use verbal cues every day. So, but how well do people recognize them as listeners? So through this lesson, we will learn what defines a verbal cue and explore some examples of different types and their purposes. So when it comes to communication, cues are prompts that people use to indicate that they expect a response or a reaction. So speakers use nonverbal cues all the time to body language or tone, but they must also deliver cues verbally. So we have here an example. If one is listening to a lecture, and for example, me, you're the student and you're listening to my lecture, and I might say something like, does anyone know why this happened? And in this case, I want someone to respond to my question. So this is an example of a verbal cue. So verbal cue are very common when teaching children. So like the one in the previous example that I have, and it is usually pretty easy to spot because they are clearly articulated words. So this, however, doesn't mean that they are always so apparent or direct. So in fact, verbal cues can come in many different forms, and a strong communicator knows how to recognize them all. So we have here an example in the image. We have answering the phone with a hello. So hello is a verbal cue because it indicates to the caller that he or she should respond. So if you are talking to someone in a phone and someone had called you and said hello, so it is your instinct to respond to the caller. We also have here an example, a student talking, a teacher talking to her students. So the student is expecting that, the teacher is expecting her students to respond actively if he or she is asking a question. Also, during a mass or a religious activity, we respond to the preacher or the pastor or the priest actively because what he or she is saying is a verbal cue. Also, when we buy in a certain store, for example, here in Sari-Sari in the Philippines, we have a Sari-Sari store, and you're buying something, you're going to the store and saying, tao po, pabili po, and of course, the verbal cue of the tindera will say, ano po yun? Okay. So these are some examples of verbal cues. We also have non-verbal cues. So we will try to differentiate verbal and non-verbal cues. So Verbal cues are the perceptual information communicated in a social exchange by signs accompanying the words used in speech. So, based from the Business Dictionary, this is the meaning of non-verbal cues. So, such cues include body language, tone, inflection, and other elements of voice, dress, etc. But Wood says nonverbal cues include all communication between people that do not have a direct verbal translation. So they are body movements, body orientation, voice, facial expressions, details of dress and choice and movement of objects that communicate. So also, this is another meaning of verbal cue. So it refers to the process of sending information through ways that do not require the use of language. So basically, these nonverbal cues are very based on the body language of the communicator. So we have here an example. So Sally and Pam are best friends who are competing for a spot in a school play. And Sally gets the role that Pam wants, but the two vows to still remain close friends. In the following days, Sally notices that Pam won't look her in the eye when she speaks. So definitely there is a awkward situation that is happening between Sally and Pam. So Pam won't stand close to Sally and Pam's voice is much lower than it used to be. Though Pam's words are friendly and she says that everything is fine, Sally can tell that Pam is hurt due to Pam's nonverbal cues. As a response, Sally decides to give Pam a tight hug and tell her that she loves her no matter what and that Pam too is special. So usually these nonverbal cues are very common in a relationship or in a affectionate relationship in family, in friends, co-workers, and in your um, child, daughter, children, husband, or girlfriend, boyfriend. So every time people communicate with other individuals, they are sending them messages. While part of the message is in the words that are spoken, there are also other ways to communicate. So this is what I'm trying to say, that communicate by sending nonverbal cues, which refers to the process of sending information through ways that do not require the use of language. So we have some images of examples of nonverbal cues. We would see that the child is very upset or disappointed because of his facial expression. We also have here um, co-workers communicating support by giving someone a high five or hugging them. So they use hand gestures to communicate direction. We also have that. We also use hand gestures to say someone to be quiet by saying shh and or not saying shoo, but just directly putting one finger into our mouth. We also say someone, we also trying to say to someone that they have to call us or we wanted to call them by putting a hand call sign gesture. And we are also trying to imply a superior view or a sense of being superior to one another by using this hand gesture by putting our hands through our waist. So typically, nonverbal behaviors such as the way we sit, tone of voice, or how fast one talk communicate messages to other people. So we have some strategies used by speakers to convey ideas. So according to Lindsay Trayman, the idea of standing in front of an audience to persuade or present often causes worry and anxiety, but it doesn't have to. So we just follow the strategies below and overcome public speaking fear in no time. So if you have fear in public speaking, try to internalize these strategies used by speakers to convey ideas. We have here thinking out ideas. So basically, in order to speak well in front of multiple people, one needs to have entire presentation planned out. If you want to speak well, you must be prepared. So just as a speaker would create an outline for the research paper, he should do the same for your presentation. You'll need to support your ideas basically for thinking for this part, and so think of examples that can be used as evidence, and your example should be based on facts, and try to structure thoughts in a way that makes sense and create a sense of completeness with a beginning, middle, and end. So by this part or this strategy, you may be able to have a good presentation and you may be able to convey your ideas properly to your audience. Think outside the box, and we also have to be prepared, like what I've said. So a speaker will need to practice speech significantly in order to feel confident while speaking. So remember, preparation is the key. Don't wait until the last minute to prepare or will not feel ready to present or will not feel ready to present. Instead of trying to memorize every word, only memorize the key points of the outline and the examples he will be using for support. So you must be engaged, not robotic sounding, and the speech should flow naturally as if one were having a conversation with another. Next strategy is to start confidently. The opening of presentation will determine how the rest of speech goes. So if you do not start confidently, so as your speech will not be confidently well end. So speak with assertiveness and at the time at a volume where everyone can easily hear. So try opening with a strong statement and bold language in order to convey confidence. Remember that the audience has no prior opinions or thoughts on what one is going to say and are the authoritative source in this situation. Also, another strategy that we have is make eye contact. So if you wanted to overcome your public speaking fear in no time, always have an eye contact. Throughout the presentation, it is important to make eye contact. Why? Because making eye contact with individuals in the room, while one should not focus on one particular person for too long, it is okay to hold someone's gaze for a few seconds. If he or she look at the floor in a random direction, your audience will sense that you are not as engaged as he or she could be or you could be. So making an eye contact lets listeners know that you believe in what you are saying and you are there to inform them about something new. So you are very confident, you are very prepared, you have already jot down your ideas and now you are making eye contact because you are very prepared to let your audience learn or let your audience learn about your public speaking. We also have to slow down. So a beginner's mistake when it comes to public speaking is to rush through presentation. So take note of this. When one walks to the podium or front door, take a deep breath, look at the audience, and even count to 5 seconds before speaking. So remember to speak clearly and enunciate the words, and you should have a slight pause after commas and between sentences, and even bigger pause between paragraphs or major points in arguments. So there's no need to rush. You must slow down in order for you to deliver your speech very well. Also, another strategy that we have is to stay steady. So most people know that it is important not to fidget during a presentation, but it's also crucial that one limit movement as much as possible. So slight swaying or talking with hands can be just as distancing as ordinary fidgeting. So the strategy that you should use is stand with feet about shoulder width apart, keep head up, and plant feet firmly to the ground. So it may feel awkward to hold this stance for a long time, but I assure you that it will help you to stand up straight and look more confident while speaking or delivering your idea or speech. And last but not the least is be human. So these are some strategies. Think out ideas, be prepared, start confidently, make eye contact, slow down, stay steady, and be human. So remember, it is okay to be nervous. So in fact, it's very normal. Everyone could experience nervousness. But don't worry about seeming nervous in front of others. So since everybody in the room has had to give a presentation at one point and understands how the speaker feels. So if one make a mistake, that's okay too. We all make mistakes. So just take a deep breath and pick up where one left off. So always keep in mind that everyone in the room is looking forward to hear what one has to say. So for this one, it's okay to make errors, and everyone is still looking forward to hear what you are going to share or say to them. So basically, these strategies will help you to overcome your fear of public speaking. So we have another um, topic, which is effectiveness of an oral communication activity. So we have discussed verbal and nonverbal cues and the strategies used by speaker to convey ideas. Now, we will try to enumerate the effectiveness of an oral communication activity. So according to management study guide staff, also called as MSG experts, there are C's of effective communication, which are applicable to both written as well as oral communication. So these are the followings. So we have completeness. So if you want to have an effective oral communication, it has to be complete. So the communication must be complete and it should convey all facts required by audience. So you as the sender of the message must take into consideration the receiver's mindset and convey the message accordingly. A complete communication has the following features. So basically, it develops and enhances the reputation of our organization. It is cost saving as no crucial information is missing and no additional cost is incurred in conveying extra message if the communication is complete. And it gives additional information wherever required. It leaves no question in the mind of receiver. It also helps in better decision making by the audience, readers, receivers of message as they get all desired and crucial information. And also, by being complete, it persuades the audience. So you have to remember these following features because it could help your oral communication activity to be effective, especially if you have this complete communication or this feature that is being complete. We also have another C, which is conciseness. So conciseness is communicating what you want to convey in least possible words without foregoing the other C's of communication. So you have to say it short, straight to the point as well. Conciseness is a necessity for effective communication. Concise communication has following features as well. So if you want to have an effective oral communication activity, it must have the following features. So since you wanted to root for being concise, concise is both time saving and as well as cost saving. It also underlines and highlights the main message as it avoids using excessive and needless words. Also, it provides short but essential message in limited words to the audience. So you have to say it short, straight to the point, and but do not forget the essential message that you wanted to convey to your audience. Also, it is more appealing and comprehensible to the audience. And if you have a concise message is non-repetitive in nature. So basically, if you want to convey in least possible words without foregoing the other C's of communication, it has to be concise. So another C's that we have for having an effective oral communication activity is consideration. Consideration implies stepping into the shoes of others. So basically, you must understand the situation of other as well. You have to consider other as well. So effective communication must take audience into consideration. So identified example is the audience viewpoints, background, mindset, education level, and etc. So you have to consider these few things into your before having an effective oral communication. So make an attempt to envisage your audience, their requirements, emotions, as well as problems. So ensure that the self-respect of the audience is maintained and their emotions are not harmed. So make sure you are not harming your audience by the use of rude words. So make sure you have a background check as well before having a speech or conveying your ideas. But I know it is not some situations it is not possible, but still you must maintain the self-respect to your audience and modify your words in the message to the suit that audience needs while making your message complete. So features of considerate communication are as follows. So if you wanted to have an effective oral communication activity, here are some features of considerate communication. So try to emphasize with the audience and exhibit interest in the audience. So this will stimulate a positive reaction from the audience and also show optimism towards your audience. So emphasize on what is possible rather than what is impossible. So they stress on positive words such as joyful, committed, thanks, warm, healthy, help, etc. Avoid using some toxic words and avoid some using negative words to your audience. So another one is clarity. So another C's for having an effective oral communication activity is clarity, and it implies emphasizing on a specific message or goal at a time. So rather than trying to achieve too much at once, you just want to emphasize only one at a time. So clarity in communication has following features. So we have the first one, it makes understanding easier. So if your message is conveyed with clarity, it helps the audience to understand it easier. Also, complete clarity of thoughts and ideas enhances the meaning of message. And if you have a clear message, make sure that you use exact, appropriate, and concrete words. So these are some of the following features for clarity. Now, let's go to concreteness. So concrete communication implies being particular and clear rather than fuzzy and general. So concreteness strengthens the confidence. Basically, concreteness has the following features. So concreteness is supported with specific facts and figures. So you have to do a research before having before communicating to someone. Make sure that it is specific and make sure it is basically relied on facts. So it makes use of words that are clear and that build the reputation. And not only that, but concrete messages are not misinterpreted. Not misinterpreted. So another is courtesy. So courtesy in message implies that the message should show the sender's expression as well as should respect the receiver. So for this one, the sender of the message should be sincerely polite, judicious, reflective, and enthusiastic. So if you want to have a courteous message, it should have the following features. And one is to take into consideration both viewpoints as well as feelings of the receiver and the message. Also, it should be positive and focused to the audience or to your receiver. And having a courteous message should make use of terms showing respect for the receiver of the message, and it is not all biased. So that is being courteous. And the last is that is being identified of to have an effective oral communication activity is correctness. So correctness in communication implies that there are no grammatical errors in communication. Or correct communication has following features. So the message is exact, correct, and well timed. If the communication is correct, it boosts up the confidence level. And also, correct message has greater impact on audience and your readers. It also checks for precisions, accurateness of facts and figures used in the message, and it makes use of appropriate and correct language in the message. So these are the 7 C's of communication that makes you an effective communicator. Again, we have completeness, conciseness, consideration, clarity, concreteness, courtesy, correctness. So before ending this topic, I will give you your activity. We have our week 5 activity. In your handouts, there are 2 activities, activity 1 and activity 2. But I will just require you to answer and submit activity 1. For activity 1, you must answer the questions in an essay form. So it is said that answer the following in 10 to 15 sentences, but I will just require you to answer this following questions into 5 or 10 to 10 sentences. So here are the questions. Why are nonverbal cues relevant? in communication even when people can already convey messages. And the second question is, what is stage fright? What are ways to overcome stage fright? So for this second question, you may base it on your own experience if you have experienced stage fright, and how did you overcome your stage fright as well. You may also tell a story of how did you overcome your stage fright, and if you are still afraid of the stage. So thank you once again for this one. If you have any questions for the activity, you may personally send me a message through my Facebook Messenger or Facebook account, or you may also directly ask me at school. Also, we have some references. So you may read Oral Communication in Context, a textbook for senior high school by Apollonia Joshua from Unlimited Books, Intramuros, Manila. And also, there's a website, www.teacherph.com, Teaching Guide, Oral Communication in Context. So this is a teacher's manual for oral communication in context for senior high school. These are some of our references. Also, I may have a suggested reading for you. You may also read activity 2. So there's a piece in your module or your PDF file. I Am a Filipino by Carlos B. Romulo. This is a suggested reading that I want you to read if you have time, but I am not requiring you to submit it. And there are some 7 C's stated in the piece that was written by Carlos B. Romulo. So again, if you have questions for week 5 topic, don't hesitate to ask me. You may ask me directly at school, or you may send me a personal message through Facebook Messenger. Thank you for this week 5. We have discussed the difference between verbal and nonverbal cues. We had comprehend an oral text and identified strategies used by the speaker to convey ideas. And also, we had evaluate the effectiveness of an oral communication activity, especially by learning the 7 C's, which is effective in communication. So if you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask me. We will end our week 5 by saying thank you, and also I will share a Bible verse for you, but from the book of Mark, chapter 9, verse 23. Said Jesus, everything is possible for one who believes. So nothing is impossible from God, and if you believe, for with God nothing shall be impossible. If you have faith, if you have belief, nothing shall be impossible. Once again, thank you so much, everyone, and thank you for the prelims that we have.